In February, Nikolai Estinovich Shurovlev, a Krasnoyarsk ethnographer, called me, returning from the south to Siberia. He asked, would the newspaper be interested in one exceptional human story? An hour later I was already in the center of Moscow, in a hotel, and listened attentively to the Siberian guest. The essence of the story was that in the mountainous Caucasia, in a remote, inaccessible region of the Western Siam, people were discovered who had been completely cut off from the world for more than 40 years. Small family. 2 children grew up in it, who since birth have not seen anyone except their parents. And who have an idea of the human world only from their stories. I immediately asked, does Nikolai Astinovich know this from his conversations, or has he seen the hermits himself? The local historian said that at first he read about the accidental find of geologists in one official paper. And in the summer he managed to get to a distant taiga corner. I was in their hut. He spoke, is now with you. Feel him. Pre-Petrine times interspersed with the Stone Age. Fire is extracted with a crystal. Lucina. In summer, barefoot, in winter, shoes are made of birch bark. We lived without salt. They don't know bread. They have not lost their language. But you hardly understand the younger ones in the family. They have contact now with the geological group and, it seems, are glad to have at least short meetings with people. But they are still wary. Little has changed in everyday life and way of life. The reason for Hermetism is religious sectarianism, rooted in pre-Petrine times. At the word, Nikon, they spit and overshadow themselves with 2 fingers. They speak of Peter I as a personal enemy. The events of recent life were unknown to them. Electricity, radio, satellites are beyond their understanding. The Robinsons were discovered in the summer of 1978. An aerial geological survey in the very upper reaches of the Abokan River discovered iron ore deposits. For their exploration, they were preparing to land a group of geologists and selected a landing site from the air. The work was painstaking. The pilots have flown over the deep canyon many times, wondering which of the pebble spits is suitable for landing. On one of the runs on the side of the mountain, the pilots saw something clearly resembling a vegetable garden. We decided at first what it seemed. What kind of vegetable garden if the area is known as uninhabited? White spot, in the full sense, to the nearest settlement down the river 250 kilometers. And still a vegetable garden. Rows of furrows darkened across the slope, most likely potatoes. And a clearing in the dark massif of larch and cedar wood could not appear by itself. Cutting down. And long-standing. Descending as much as possible over the mountain tops. The pilots saw something like housing near the vegetable garden. Another circle was laid housing. There is also a path to the stream. And the blocks of chopped logs are dried. However, no people were to be seen. Riddle. On the map of pilots in such deserted places, any residential point, even a hunter's winter quarters empty in summer, must be marked. And here is a vegetable garden. The pilots put a cross on the map and, continuing their search for a landing site, they finally found it by the river, 15 kilometers from the mysterious place. When the geologists were informed about the results of exploration, they paid special attention to the mysterious find. There were 4 geologists who started work at the Volkovskaya ore deposit. 3 men and 1 woman, Galina Pismanskaya, who led the group. Left alone with the taiga. They didn't lose sight of the fact that there was a mysterious, vegetable garden, somewhere nearby. It is safer to meet a beast in the taiga than a stranger. And, in order not to get lost in conjectures, the geologists decided to immediately clarify the situation. And here it is most appropriate to cite a record of the story of Galina Pismanskaya herself. Choosing a fine day, we put some gifts for our possible friends in our backpack. But just in case I checked the pistol that was hanging on my side. The place marked by the pilots lay at about a kilometer mark up the mountainside. Rising, we suddenly went out onto the path. The sight of her, even to an inexperienced eye, could tell. The path has been used for many years and someone's feet have walked along it quite recently. In one place there was a small stick leaning against a tree by the path. Then we saw 2 storage sheds. In these buildings standing on high pillars, birch bark boxes with dry potatoes cut into slices were found. For some reason this find calmed us down, and we already confidently walked along the path. Traces of the presence of people here now came across all the time and abandoned work too. A log lying as a bridge over the stream, traces of a fire. And here is a dwelling near the stream. The hut, blackened by time and rains, was furnished on all sides with some kind of taiga rubbish, bark, poles, and gaps. If it were not for a window the size of my backpack pocket, it would be difficult to believe that people live here. But they undoubtedly lived here. Next to the hut there was a well-groomed vegetable garden with potatoes, onions and turnips. A hole with fresh earth adhered to it lay at the edge. Our arrival was evidently noticed. The low door creaked. And into the light of day, as in a fairy tale, the figure of an ancient old man appeared. Barefoot. On the body there is a patched shirt made of burlap. From her there are trousers, and also in patches, an unkempt beard. Disheveled hair on the head. Frightened, very attentive look. And indecision. Shifting from foot to foot, as if the earth had suddenly become hot. The old man silently looked at us. We were also silent. This went on for a minute. I should have said something. I said, "Hello, grandfather. We are visiting you." The old man did not answer immediately. He stomped, looked around, touched the strap on the wall with his hand, and finally we heard a quiet, indecisive voice, "Well, come in if you came." The old man opened the door and we found ourselves in a musty, sticky darkness. Again there was a painful silence, which suddenly broke into sobs and lamentations. And only then did we see the silhouettes of two women. One fought in hysterics and prayed, "This is for our sins, for our sins." The other, holding on to the pillar that supported the sagging mat, slowly sank to the floor. The light from the window fell on her widened, mortally frightened eyes, and we realized we must go outside as soon as possible. The old man followed us. And, also quite embarrassed, said that these were his two daughters. Letting our new acquaintances come to their senses, we laid out a fire on the side and got something from the food. In half an hour, about from under the canopy of the hut, 3 figures approached the fire, a grandfather and his 2 daughters. There were no more signs of hysteria, fear and open curiosity on their faces. Those who came up resolutely refused to be treated with canned food, tea and bread. "We can't do that." On a stone hearth near the hut, they put a small iron pot with potatoes washed in a stream, covered the dishes with stone tiles and waited. To the question, "Have they ever eaten bread?" the old man said, "I ate something. And they don't. Have not even seen." The daughters were dressed the same as the old man, in homespun hemp sacking. The cut of all the clothes was also baggy, holes for the head, a belt string, and all solid patches. The conversation didn't go well at first. And not only because of embarrassment. We could hardly understand the speech of our daughters. It contained many ancient words, the meaning of which had to be guessed. The manner of speaking was also very peculiar, a dull recitative with a pronunciation in the nose. When the sisters talked among themselves, the sound of their voices sounded like slow, muffled cooing. In the evening, the acquaintance had advanced quite far, and we already knew. The old man's name was Karpasipovich, and the daughters were Natalia and Agafya. Surname Lykovs. The youngest, Agafya, during the conversation, suddenly declared with obvious pride that she could read. Having asked permission from her father, Agafya slipped into the house and returned with a heavy, smoked book. Opening her on her knees, she chanted, just as she spoke, recited a prayer. Then, wanting to show that Natalia could also read, she put the book on her lap. And after that everyone was significantly silent. It was felt that the ability to read was highly valued by these people and was the subject of, perhaps, their greatest pride. "Can you read?" Agafya asked me. All 3 of them waited with curiosity for my answer. I said that I can read and write. This, it seemed to us, somewhat disappointed the old man and the sisters, who apparently considered the ability to read and write to be an exceptional gift. But skill is skill, and I was now accepted as an equal. My grandfather, however, considered it necessary to immediately ask if I was a girl. In terms of voice and the rest, like a girl, but the clothes. This amused me and my 3 companions, who explained to Karpasipovich that I can not only write, read, but also I am the head of the group. Your deeds are inscrutable, Lord, said the old man, crossing himself. And the daughters also began to pray. With prayer, our interlocutors interrupted a long drawn-out conversation. There were many questions from both sides. And the time has come to ask the main question for us. How did these people end up so far from people? Without losing caution in the conversation, the old man said that he and his wife left people at God's command. We cannot live in peace. The gifts we brought, a piece of linen, threads, needles, fishing hooks, were accepted here with gratitude. The sisters, looking at each other, stroked their hands, looked at the light. The first meeting ended there. The parting was almost friendly. And we felt, they will be waiting for us in the forest hut now. One can understand the curiosity of 4 young people who unexpectedly met a fragment of almost fossil life. On every fine free day, they hurried to the taiga cache. It seemed that we all already knew about the fate of the taiga recluses, who aroused curiosity, surprise and pity at the same time, when it suddenly turned out that we didn't know everyone in the family yet. On the 4th or 5th visit, the geologists did not find the owner in the hut. The sisters answered evasively to their questions, "He will come soon." The old man came, but not alone. He appeared on the path accompanied by 2 men. In the hands of the road. The clothes are still the same, patched sacking. Barefoot. Bearded. They were no longer young, although it was difficult to judge their age. Both watched with curiosity and worry. Undoubtedly, they already knew from the old man about the visits of people to the cache. They were already prepared for the meeting. Yet one could not restrain himself at the sight of the one that most aroused their curiosity. The one walking first turned to the other with an exclamation, "To try, girl." The girl is standing. The old man appealed to his companions. And presented as his sons. This is the elder, Savin. And this is Detrai, born here. At this performance, the brothers stood with their heads down, leaning on the road. It turned out that they lived in a family separately for some reason. 6 kilometers away, near the river, stood the hut with a vegetable garden and a cellar. It was the male branch of the settlement. Both taiga huts were connected by a trail along which they walked here and there almost every day. Geologists also began to walk along the path. Galina Pismanskaya, the friendliness was sincere, mutual. Yet we had no hope that the hermits would agree to visit our base camp, located 15 kilometers down the river. Painfully often we heard the phrase, "We cannot do this." And what our surprise was when one day a whole detachment appeared at the tents. The old man himself is at the head, followed by the kids, Detrai, Natalia, Agafya, Savin. An old man in a high cap made of musk deer camas, his sons in hoods made of burlap. All 5 are dressed in sackcloth. Barefoot. In the hands of the road. On the shoulder straps are sacks of potatoes and pine nuts brought to our hotel. The conversation was general and lively. And they ate apart again. "We can't eat your food." They sat down at some distance under the cedar. And tied the sacks, chewed potato, bread, which looked blacker than the ground near a bokken. Washed down with water from the tuski. Then they gnawed on the nuts and for prayer. In the tent allocated for them, the guests tried for a long time, crumpled the cots with their palms. To try, without undressing, went to bed. Savin did not dare. He sat down next to the bed and so, sitting, slept. I later found out, he adapted himself to sleep in the hut. The food is more pleasing to God. The practical head of the family crumpled the edge of the tent in his hands for a long time. Tried to stretch the canvas and clinked his tongue. "Oh, strong, good. On trousers, there will be no wear." In September, when there was already snow on the char, it was time for the geologists to leave. They went to the taiga huts to say goodbye. "What if with us?" said the boss girl, half jokingly. Settle down wherever you want, we will help to build a hut, you will start a vegetable garden. No, we cannot. All 5 waved their hands. We can't. The old man said firmly. The helicopter, flying away, made 2 circles over the mountain with a vegetable garden. 5 barefoot people were standing by the heap of dug up potatoes, their heads lifted up. They did not wave their hands, did not move. Only 1 out of 5 fell to his knees, prayed. In the world, the story of geologists about the find in the taiga, of course, has caused a lot of talk, gossip, and assumptions. What kind of people? Old-timers of the Abakan River confidently said, these are Sergei's Old Believers. This has happened before. But there was a rumor that a white guard lieutenant withdrew to the taiga in the 1920s, who supposedly killed his older brother and hid with his wife. They also talked about the 30s, there was everything here. Nikolai Astanovich Shurov left, partly because of his service, partly because of his passion for local law, for everything unusual, decided to get to the taiga corner. And he succeeded. With a hunter guide and a police sergeant from the regional center Tashti. He got to the taiga garden and found there the picture already described. 5 people still lived in 2 huts, convinced that this is how true Christians should live. Those who came were greeted with caution. Still, we managed to find out, this is a family of old believers, the family retired to the taiga in the 30s. Old man Lykovs Old was 83 years old. The eldest son 7-56, Natalia -46, Tatrai -40, the youngest, Agafya, was 39. Living an everyday life are miserable to the extreme. Prayers, reading of service books, and a genuine struggle for existence in an almost primitive environment. No questions were asked to those who came. The story about the present life and about the most important events in it was listened to like the Martians. Nikolai Astanovich was with the Lykovs for less than a day. Learned geologists, now from an expanded party, are in the garden relatively often. Some out of understandable curiosity, others, to help the old people build a new hut, dig potatoes. The Lykovs also occasionally go to the village. They walk, as before, barefoot, but some of the gift has appeared in their clothes. The grandfather liked the felt hat with small brim, the daughters wear dark shawls. Zavin and Detrai replaced homespun trousers with ones made of tent fabric. Nikolai Astanovich's story was interesting, but raised many questions to which the narrator did not have complete answers. The path of the Lykov family to the extreme point of distance from people was not entirely clear. It was interesting to see the traces of the schism about which so much was written in due time, using the example of specific lives. But more important for me than questions of religion was the question, how did you live? How could people survive not in the tropics near bananas, but in the Siberian taiga with waist-deep snow and frost for 30? Food, clothing, household utensils, fire, light in the home, maintaining a vegetable garden. Fighting diseases, counting time, how was all this carried out and obtained, what effort and skill did it require? Was it attractive to people? And how does the world around him appear to the younger Lykov, for whom the taiga was a maternity hospital? In what relationship were they with their father and mother, with each other? What did they know about the taiga and its inhabitants? How they imagined the worldly life, they knew, somewhere there is this life. They could have known about her at least from the flying planes. An important thing, there are gender issues, the instinct to continue life. How could a mother and father, who knew what love is, could deprive their children of this joy, given by life to all that exists in her? Finally, meeting people. For the youngest in the family, she was undoubtedly a shock. What did she bring the Lykovs? Sure, perhaps, regret that the secret of their life was revealed. There were many other disturbingly incomprehensible features of the lost life. Sitting in a Moscow hotel, Cape Nikolai Astanovich wrote a whole column of questions on a piece of paper. And we decided, as soon as summer comes and the lost land becomes available for the expedition, we will visit the Lykovs. Please share these videos on your social networks using the buttons below the video and subscribe to the channel. Please press the bell for notifications about new videos on the channel. Please watch other videos about Agafya Lykova that you now see on the screen in the end screens. There are many rare and interesting facts about the Hermit. Thanks everyone for watching.